You're driving home. Maybe it's late. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you're not thinking about anything except getting through the front door and kicking off your shoes. Then you see it. Red and blue lights flashing in your rearview mirror. Your stomach drops. You slow down, pull over, hands already starting to shake. But when the officer walks up to your window, something feels different. The patch isn't local police. The badge isn't highway patrol. It's federal. It's ICE. And in that exact moment, heart pounding, thoughts scrambling, adrenaline flooding your system, most people make the mistake that changes everything. Not because they're guilty, not because they did something wrong, but because they talk, or they argue, or they move the wrong way, or they say one sentence that can never be taken back. Here's the truth no one tells you. The first 60 seconds of that encounter matter more than anything that happens afterward. And ICE is counting on you not knowing that. They're counting on nerves. They're counting on confusion. They're counting on you trying to explain. But there are 4 words, just 4, that can completely change the direction of that stop. And if you don't say them immediately, you may never get the chance to fix it later. There are 5 traps hidden inside that flashing light moment. 5 psychological pressure points designed to make you cooperate against your own interests. And the last one, it's the one even smart people, even people who think they know their rights, mess up all the time. So before you ever find yourself on the side of the road with federal agents at your window, you need to understand exactly what's happening in that interaction, why your brain will try to betray you, and what to say instead. Hi, I'm Sophia, and this is Global Visa Guide, where I break down real-world legal encounters so you know how to protect yourself before you ever need to. My goal isn't to make you afraid, it's to make you prepared, because preparation is what keeps a tense encounter from turning into handcuffs. And when it comes to ICE stops, preparation is everything. This isn't about politics. It's not about debating immigration policy. It's about understanding psychology, constitutional rights, and how quickly ordinary conversations can become evidence. When people panic, they try to defend themselves in the moment. They argue, they overshare, they try to prove they're good. And that instinct, that human emotional instinct, is exactly what creates legal problems. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the 5 traps ICE is counting on, the psychological pressure behind each one, and the exact words you need to say so you don't accidentally build a case against yourself on the side of the road. Not legal theory, not complicated language. Simple, clear phrases you can actually remember when your heart is racing and your palms are sweating. Because here's what most people don't realize. When those lights come on behind you, your body shifts into survival mode. Your brain stops thinking long-term. It starts thinking, how do I make this uncomfortable moment end right now? And that's when you start talking. That's when you start answering questions you don't have to answer. That's when you try to correct the officer or challenge them or explain your entire life story in 30 seconds. And ICE knows that. They know silence feels awkward. They know authority creates pressure. They know most people have been conditioned since childhood to answer when an adult in uniform asks a question. But this isn't a classroom. It's not a casual conversation. It's a legal encounter. Every word matters. Every movement matters. Every yes or no matters. And the difference between a routine stop and a life-altering situation can be a single sentence spoken under stress. So before we go any further, I want you to lock this into your memory right now. You do not win legal battles on the side of the road. You win them later in controlled environments, with representation, with time to think. The roadside is not where you prove your innocence. It's where you protect your rights. And that starts with knowing when to speak and when not to. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how these encounters escalate, how agents use tone and small talk to gather information, how consent can destroy defenses you didn't even know you had, and why simply staying quiet is not always enough. But first, you need to understand the most common mistake people make the second that window rolls down. The mistake that turns tension into confrontation almost instantly. And once you see it, you'll never look at a roadside stop the same way again. The first mistake people make is almost automatic. The window comes down, the badge flashes, and the instinct kicks in. Defend yourself. Why did you stop me? You don't have the right. This is profiling. This is illegal. It feels empowering in the moment. It feels like you're standing up for yourself. But here's the reality. The roadside is not a courtroom, and it is not a debate stage. The side of the highway is not where constitutional arguments get decided. The moment confrontation begins, the entire emotional temperature of that stop changes. What might have been a routine interaction becomes adversarial, and when that happens, the officer's mindset shifts into what I call control and safety mode. Once that switch flips, everything you do is filtered through suspicion. Your tone becomes part of the narrative. Your frustration becomes agitation. Your raised voice becomes non-compliance. And whether that interpretation is fair or not doesn't matter in that moment, because perception drives reaction. So instead of arguing legality on the asphalt, you shift your strategy. You control what you can control: your body, your tone, your words. Keep your hands visible, move slowly, speak calmly. If you're the driver in most jurisdictions, you are required to provide your driver's license and registration during a lawful traffic stop. That's not surrendering your rights. That's complying with a limited, legally required instruction. If you're a passenger, the rules are often different. Generally, passengers do not have to provide identification absent specific circumstances, and you do not have to answer investigative questions. But here's the part many people misunderstand. During a traffic stop, everyone inside that vehicle is considered seized under the law. That means passengers can't simply open the door and walk away because they're frustrated. That alone can escalate the encounter. So instead of debating, instead of lecturing, instead of trying to win an argument that cannot be won in that setting, you use one controlled sentence. "Officer, I will comply with lawful instructions, but I'm not answering questions." That's it. No sarcasm, no attitude, no extra commentary. Calm, neutral, firm. You are not agreeing. You are not confessing. You are not consenting. You are preserving your position without pouring gasoline on the situation. And that single shift from argument to controlled response prevents the first escalation trap ICE is counting on. But here's where it gets more subtle and frankly more dangerous. Because sometimes the interaction doesn't feel confrontational at all. Sometimes it feels friendly, casual, even polite. "Where are you headed tonight? Where are you coming from? Who owns this vehicle? Is there anything in the car I should know about? Where were you born?" The tone is relaxed. The questions sound harmless. And this is exactly why so many people fall into the second trap, the small talk fishing expedition. Human beings are wired to respond to questions, especially from authority figures. Silence feels awkward. We've been trained since childhood that not answering is disrespectful. So, we fill the silence. We explain. We clarify. We overshare. And under stress, our brains don't function the way we think they do. Adrenaline interferes with memory recall. Nervousness disrupts linear thinking. You might say you left at 8 when you actually left at 8:20. You might say you had one drink earlier because you're trying to sound honest. You might say, "I wasn't born here," while trying to explain your status. Those small, seemingly harmless statements can become admissions. They can create inconsistencies. They can justify prolonging the stop while agents clarify details. And here's what's important to understand. ICE and law enforcement are often trained to ask questions, not just to get answers, but to observe how you answer. Your tone, your hesitation, your eye movement, your breathing. The longer you talk, the more material exists to analyze later. And once something is said, it cannot be unsaid. So instead of engaging in that back and forth, instead of trying to prove you have nothing to hide, you simplify your strategy. You become what I call a calm, broken record. I'm exercising my right to remain silent. Or even simpler, I plead the fifth. Short, clear, unmistakable. You do not need to deliver a constitutional lecture. You do not need to say it perfectly. You do not need legal poetry. I plead the fifth. That's enough. And when the question comes again, because it probably will, you repeat it. Same tone, same volume, no irritation, no escalation, just consistency. Sometimes you'll hear, "So, you're refusing to cooperate?" Or the classic pressure tactic, "Only guilty people don't answer questions." Understand what that is. It's not a legal argument. It's psychological leverage. It's designed to make you uncomfortable enough to start talking. And most people do because they want to be seen as cooperative. They want the interaction to end quickly. But cooperation does not mean volunteering information. Cooperation can mean complying with lawful instructions while refusing to answer investigative questions. There is a difference. And repeating, "I plead the fifth," may feel awkward in the moment, but awkwardness is temporary. Statements are permanent. The goal isn't to win approval. The goal is to avoid giving away pieces of your defense before you even understand what you're defending against. Because once small talk turns into documented statements, the stop has already expanded, and what started as flashing lights in your mirror has quietly become something much more serious. Now let's talk about the trap that quietly destroys more defenses than almost anything else. Consent. Not force, not warrants. Consent. Because when an agent asks for permission to search, it often doesn't sound dramatic. It sounds casual. You wouldn't mind if I take a quick look, right? Just making sure there's nothing illegal in the car, and that's okay. If you've got nothing to hide, we're good to check. Notice the phrasing. It's designed to corner you socially. If you say no, it sounds like you're hiding something. If you say yes, you've just handed over your legal shield. And here's where people get tripped up. They answer sloppily. Sure. Or they say, no, meaning, no, I don't mind. And the officer hears, no problem. Or they say, yeah, I guess, because they feel pressured. That single moment can eliminate arguments your attorney might have used later. Because if you consent to a search, you've often waived the ability to challenge it. You've told the court, in effect, I allowed this, and you cannot rewind that. So you do not answer with yes or no. You do not debate. You do not ask why. You do not argue about warrants on the roadside. You use one clean, unambiguous sentence. I do not consent to searches. That's it. Clear, direct, impossible to twist. And after that, you follow with another critical question. Am I free to leave? That question matters because it forces clarity. If the original purpose of the stop, say a traffic violation, is complete, the detention cannot be extended indefinitely without legal justification. When you ask, am I free to leave? You are signaling that you understand the stop cannot just drift into an open-ended investigation without cause. You are not being aggressive, you are being precise. And even if they say no, even if they continue, you have preserved your position. You've made your lack of consent crystal clear. And here's something people forget. Even if you have absolutely nothing illegal in your car, you still don't want a roadside search. Vehicles get torn apart. Personal belongings end up on the pavement. Dogs scratch interiors. And if nothing is found, you don't get your peace of mind back from that experience. You don't get your privacy back. Consent is not about hiding wrongdoing. It's about protecting boundaries. So remember the sequence. I do not consent to searches. Then, am I free to leave? And if questioning continues, you return to your broken record. I plead the fifth. Short, calm, repeated as needed. Because this next trap isn't about what you say, it's about what you do. Movement. Movement creates fear, and fear creates justification. When agents approach a vehicle, they are trained to look for sudden motions, reaching under seats, digging into bags, leaning quickly. From inside your own car, it might feel harmless. To someone approaching with limited visibility, it can feel like a threat. And once an officer articulates that they feared for their safety, courts give that explanation enormous weight. So, you treat your movements like a checklist. Hands visible, preferably on the steering wheel if you're the driver. Passengers keep hands where they can be seen. No sudden reaching. If you need to access your registration and it's in the glove box, you narrate before you move. My registration is in the glove box. I'm going to reach for it slowly. Then you move slowly. If there's anything sensitive in that area, especially a firearm, you communicate clearly before doing anything. Officer, the documents you requested are in the glove box and there is a licensed firearm inside. How would you like me to proceed? And let me be direct about something critical. Do not touch a firearm in the presence of law enforcement during a stop. Even if you believe you are legally entitled to possess it, even if you think you're being helpful, let them retrieve it if necessary. Because the moment you grab a weapon in that setting, almost any reaction from the officer will later be defended as a safety response, and you do not want to create that scenario. Survival and safety come before pride about property. There's another reality people struggle with. If you are ordered out of the vehicle, you must comply. Courts have consistently held that officers can order drivers and passengers out during lawful traffic stops for safety reasons. That justification does not have to be debated on the roadside. It will be evaluated later if necessary. Refusing to exit in that moment does not create leverage. It creates escalation. The same applies to passengers who think, "I didn't do anything. I'm leaving." During a stop, you are detained. Walking away can be interpreted as non-compliance and can quickly spiral into physical removal. And once physical force enters the picture, everything becomes more chaotic, more dangerous, and more legally complicated. So the strategy is simple but disciplined. Comply with physical instructions. Refuse to answer investigative questions. Do not consent to searches. Keep movement slow and predictable. Control your body language because you cannot control the officer's perception entirely, but you can avoid feeding it. Every calm movement reduces tension. Every narrated action reduces uncertainty. Every visible hand reduces fear. And when fear is reduced, justification narrows. That is how you prevent a tense stop from becoming a chaotic one. But even if you do all of this, even if you stay calm, even if you limit your words, even if you refuse consent, there's one final trap that can still undo everything if you don't handle it correctly. And it comes down to something most people completely misunderstand about silence. Here's the trap that surprises people the most. Silence by itself is not always enough. A lot of viewers think, "I'll just shut up. I won't say anything." And while that instinct is directionally correct, courts have made something very clear over the years. In certain situations, your right to remain silent must be clearly invoked. In other words, you cannot always rely on quiet alone to protect you. If you simply sit there and say nothing, an officer may continue questioning. In some contexts, silence can even be interpreted in ways you don't expect. That's why clarity matters. That's why those 4 words matter. You must say it out loud, calmly, audibly, unmistakably. "I plead the fifth," or "I am exercising my right to remain silent." You are putting the officer on notice. You are creating a record, especially important if body cameras are running. When those words are spoken clearly, they establish a boundary, and boundaries are powerful in legal settings. There's another sentence that becomes critical if the encounter escalates beyond a temporary stop. "I want a lawyer." Not, "Maybe I should talk to someone." Not, "Do you think I need an attorney?" Clear, direct. "I want a lawyer." Once you request counsel, questioning should stop. But again, it must be clear. Vague hints do not carry the same legal force. And this is where people stumble. They try to be polite. They try to soften it. They say, "I think I'd rather not answer that," or "Maybe I shouldn't talk." That ambiguity creates room for continued questioning. Precision protects you. So let's simplify this so it locks into your memory under stress. If you remember nothing else from this entire video, remember these 4 protective statements. I plead the fifth. I do not consent to searches. Am I free to leave? And if things escalate, I want a lawyer. Those are your verbal shields. They are short enough to remember when adrenaline is flooding your system. They are clear enough to withstand scrutiny later, and they prevent you from accidentally volunteering information that can never be taken back. And if this is already helping you see these encounters differently, take a second to share this video with someone who might need it, and subscribe to Global Visa Guide. You never know whose future depends on hearing the right words at the right time. Now, let's walk through how this actually plays out in real life, because information sticks better when you can picture it. Imagine the lights come on behind you. You pull over safely, engine off, hands on the wheel. An ICE agent approaches. You roll the window down halfway. "Good evening. Where are you coming from?" Your heart is pounding. You feel that urge to explain. Instead, you say calmly, "I'm exercising my right to remain silent." The agent pauses. "Why won't you answer my question?" You keep your tone even. "I plead the fifth." There's a moment of tension. "Is this your vehicle?" "I plead the fifth." Maybe irritation creeps into their voice. "So, you're refusing to cooperate." "I will comply with lawful instructions, but I'm not answering questions." Notice what you're doing. You're not escalating. You're not debating. You're not insulting. You're simply refusing to provide investigative information. Then it shifts. "You wouldn't mind if we take a quick look inside, right?" This is the pivot point where so many cases collapse. You respond immediately, "I do not consent to searches." No extra words, no defensive explanation, just the sentence. "Step out of the vehicle." You comply slowly, hands visible, No sudden movement. Do you have anything illegal in the car? I plead the fifth. Where were you born? I'm exercising my right to remain silent. If the agent continues holding you there after the purpose of the stop appears complete, you ask, "Am I free to leave?" That question forces clarity. If the answer is yes, you leave calmly. If the answer is no, you have now established a timeline and a record of your position. And if at any point you are told you are being detained beyond a temporary stop or placed under arrest, you say clearly, "I want a lawyer." Then you stop talking entirely. Notice what didn't happen in that scenario. There was no roadside argument, no lecture about constitutional law, no emotional outburst, no sarcastic comments, no consent, no volunteering of immigration status, just controlled repetition. That repetition may feel uncomfortable in the moment, but discomfort is temporary. Legal consequences are not. The power in this strategy is its simplicity. You are not trying to outsmart anyone. You are not trying to perform. You are creating as little evidentiary material as possible while complying with lawful physical commands. And that balance, compliance without self-incrimination, is what protects you. But before we close this out, we need to reinforce the mistakes that still trip people up even after they've heard all of this. Because knowing the phrases is one thing, executing them under pressure is another. Let's lock this in by going over what not to do, because sometimes avoiding the mistake is just as important as knowing the right words. Do not argue the law on the side of the road. It does not matter how wrong you believe the stop is. It does not matter how unfair it feels. The roadside is not where legality is decided. Judges decide that later. Your job in that moment is not to win a debate. It's to avoid digging a deeper hole. Do not explain your life story hoping transparency will save you. Oversharing is not protection. Do not volunteer your immigration status. Do not guess. Do not speculate. Do not try to clarify something that hasn't even been formally alleged. Every extra sentence is an opportunity for inconsistency, and inconsistency is often all that's needed to justify prolonging an encounter. Do not joke to ease tension. Humor under stress is unpredictable, and sarcasm can be interpreted as hostility. Do not respond emotionally to bait like, "Only guilty people stay silent." That line is designed to provoke you. It is not a legal principle. Innocent people invoke their rights every single day. Rights are not admissions. They are protections. Do not consent to searches because you think refusal makes you look suspicious. Consent eliminates arguments that might have protected you later. And do not rely on silence alone without clearly invoking your right to remain silent. If you do not say it, you risk ambiguity. Ambiguity is not your friend in a legal setting. And perhaps most importantly, do not let pride override strategy. Many encounters escalate because someone feels disrespected and wants to push back. That emotional response is human. It's understandable. But strategy requires discipline. Strategy requires thinking beyond the next 5 minutes and focusing on the next 5 months or 5 years. A calm, controlled encounter may feel unsatisfying in the moment. You may drive away feeling frustrated that you didn't stand up more aggressively. But preserving your freedom is more important than winning a verbal exchange. Now, zoom out for a second. Why does all of this matter so much? Because stress changes people. When those lights flash behind you, your nervous system activates. Your heart rate spikes, blood flow shifts, fine motor skills decrease, logical processing narrows. You enter fight or flight mode. In that state, people either talk too much or become confrontational. Very few people naturally become precise and disciplined. That's why preparation matters. Rehearsal matters. If you've heard the words before, if you've mentally practiced them, you're more likely to access them under pressure. That's not theory, that's neuroscience. Familiar language is easier to retrieve when adrenaline is high. So, let's rehearse one last time together. If questioned, I plead the fifth. If asked to search, I do not consent to searches. If the stop appears extended, am I free to leave? If detained or arrested, I want a lawyer. Short, clear, repeatable. These phrases are not magic spells. They do not guarantee a perfect outcome, but they dramatically reduce the chances that you will become the architect of your own legal problem. Because the most damaging evidence in many cases is not discovered. It is volunteered. Preparation is not paranoia. It is responsibility. Whether you are a citizen, a permanent resident, undocumented, or simply someone who wants to understand how federal encounters work, the principle is the same. You protect your rights by using them correctly, calmly, respectfully, clearly. And you remember that the goal is not to defeat an officer in conversation, it is to walk away with your future intact. If this video gave you clarity, stay connected to Global Visa Guide. These real-world breakdowns exist so you never have to improvise in a high-stakes moment. And if you take nothing else with you today, take the 4-word shield that can change everything. I plead the 5th. I do not consent to searches. Say them clearly, say them calmly, and protect yourself. You've been watching Global Visa Guide.